It might be a bit premature to say that Netflix's Witcher has failed given that Season 3 comes out in just a few days, but it definitely does feel like Season 3 marks the beginning of the end. The recasting Henry Cavill as Geralt of Rivia over alleged claims that the writers are disinterested in staying faithful to the books, which goes against Cavill's interests as he's a very die-hard and passionate fan of the series. And following Season 3's controversial trailer, fans are already trying to boycott the show. I've never made a TV show and I probably never will, but I think one of the main components of having a successful show is having fans. And this show has done pretty much everything it can to make sure that the existing fan base of the series is not happy. But are the writers really to blame for this? Yeah, 100% they are, but the question is why. Not why are they to blame, that question is obvious and redundant. The question we should ask is, why did the writers get it so wrong? Is it simply incompetence, or is adapting a body of work such as The Witcher simply not possible? Well, to be fair, adapting anything into a film or TV series is gonna be difficult. There are several conventions that work on text but just don't work on film, and so any adaptation is bound to have several changes. And on many occasions, these changes work and allow for the essence of the original to be captured and enjoyed on a TV screen. And that can happen in various degrees of faithfulness. Some are extremely accurate, and some have various changes, but they still end up creating a very good final product. Unfortunately, the changes on the Netflix Witcher series is neither. Season 1 was honestly not bad. It wasn't perfect, but it wasn't bad and it didn't ruin The Witcher as a lot of people claimed it did. Frankly, the mistakes they made were acceptable and to a degree inevitable. Season 1 was based on The Last Wish and parts of The Sword of Destiny. These are, as I'm sure most of you know, two short story novels introducing the world of The Witcher and the following books where the main story begins. These short stories, at least at first glance, are seemingly easy to adapt. Just translate the stories as best as possible without losing too much meaning and you should be set, right? Well, there are two main hurdles that Netflix had to overcome. Firstly, the two books are centered primarily around Geralt, with the other two major characters, Ciri and Yennefer, not having a major role. While Ciri does eventually take a very leading role in the later books, it doesn't happen right now, and Yennefer really never gets a prominent role, but she still is a main character who influences the story greatly. In the Netflix series, the writers try to balance all three characters so they get more or less equal screen time. Which brings me to my second point. They didn't have too much screen time to begin with. They had 8 one-ish hour long episodes to tell 10 short stories. And of course that means you have to start cutting. But also, because they want to tell 3 different storylines simultaneously that aren't part of the direct canon, they have to add some stuff as well. So while stories like The Eternal Flame were super fun in the books and do demonstrate some of the nuance in Geralt's character, it can be cut out for the sake of time. Instead of going through that whole story to showcase Geralt's morals when it comes to killing sentient creatures, the Dragon Hunt story did a good enough job to cover it while saving on precious time. But some stories they should have definitely not cut. The short story, The Sword of Destiny, the namesake of the novel, was in my opinion crucial to developing the relationship between Geralt and Ciri, but was unfortunately cut from the show. It also introduces the theme of destiny significantly better than what was done in the show. For a quick summary, in this short story, Geralt is acting as an emissary for some king to the Queen of the Dryads of the Brokilon Forest, and en route, Geralt meets Ciri for the first time, who was traveling to a neighboring kingdom to Cintra for a potential marriage, but somehow got lost in Brokilon Forest. Out of pity, they take her with her. Geralt, knowing the customs of Brokilon, assumes that she will never be allowed to leave and will end up a Dryad. Once they get to the Queen, her identity of Ciri is revealed, her shared destiny with Geralt is revealed, and also her elder blood. Their shared journey to the heart of the Brokilon also builds so much of the relationship, and as a result, their meeting in Rivendell later on is so much more emotional. The reason being is, in the show, it almost just seems like the whole nonsense of destiny is the only thing that binds them, where in the book, we have this extremely close bond and a relationship that is more human and realistic. It shows off that it isn't just destiny that binds them, but a human connection. In the show, however, we just get some nonsense with Renfri and some nonsense with Calanthe, and all of a sudden Ciri and Geralt are hugging each other in a forest. Speaking of Renfri, that was by far the worst done story in the whole season. It is a perfect example of how Netflix writers failed to adapt this series. The whole purpose of this story was a moral dilemma between choosing the lesser evil.
Evil is evil, Stregobor. Lesser, greater, middling. It's all the same. If I have to choose between one evil and another, then I prefer not to choose at all.
The whole message of this iconic line was completely lost in this episode, in my opinion. In the books, Renfri plans to kill everyone in the market so the evil wizard Stregobor comes out of hiding. Both Stregobor and Renfri try to get Geralt to kill one another, but he decides not to. However, through slow exposition of the writing, Renfri's plan to slaughter everyone in the market as hostages to get Stregobor to calm down was revealed. In the show, Geralt simply just wakes up in the middle of the forest, exclaims, "The market," and then runs off and starts killing people.
The market.
It isn't until after that we, the audience, learn what the hell just happened. That simply is not good enough. Anyone who didn't read the books would absolutely have no idea what just went down until the very end of the episode. The moral dilemma is completely lost and doesn't get demonstrated at all. And in my opinion, it felt like it could be left out so they could do the whole dream sequence with Renfri and Geralt and Destiny, which wouldn't have been necessary if Ciri just went to Brokilon with Geralt. Oh, but they managed to save some time, and you just said time was a problem. Well, the thing is, Ciri needs to go to Brokilon no matter what. It's an essential part of the story. And she does it in the show, but instead of developing a relationship with Geralt, she develops a relationship with Ratboy. Now, so far, I've been trying to guess at Netflix writers' motivations to at least have some explanation to defend their actions, but honestly I have no idea why they decided to add Ratboy to the story. The whole plotline with the Doppler Mousak and Ratboy just doesn't work. If you got rid of the whole sequence of her being kidnapped by the Doppler and her meeting Ratboy, it would have taken away nothing from the show and nothing from the story. Adding this bit in and cutting the other story out was a mistake. The showrunner stated they did this because otherwise they would have had to introduce Ciri in season 2 at the latest, but chronologically the fall of Cintra happens after these events, which occur in episode 7, which means that Ciri would have had to be introduced at earliest before episode 7. Or perhaps they mean they could have not told the story they wanted to with the time constraints of the show's runtime, but the question is why? Why did they want to tell the story about Ratboy and fake Mousak when all it did was take away from the show? Removing the short story that is the namesake of the novel completely ruins one of the most important parts of this whole story. Not all was bad, however. Yennefer's origin story was also done surprisingly well. It was sourced from a few cryptic paragraphs from the second to last novel, and it really did a great job of fleshing out the character. Furthermore, the whole Battle of Sodden was quite enjoyable. Making Fringilla Vigo a cultist was a bit of a shock, and it was an odd choice in my opinion, but there was no shortage of other sorceresses that could take her place in her role in the later books. But it at least allowed for Yennefer to have some more screen time in a way that made sense. If only it stayed that way. Overall though, season 1 was good enough to introduce the story well. Despite it feeling rushed, it definitely allows for the following stories to be told to their fullest. And since they just have to adapt one book per season, I was convinced that the following season will be faithful and won't cut too much out of it. And it would definitely not need to add any more unnecessary plotlines because the Blood of Elves is already filled with exciting moments. I was very wrong. I'd like to start by saying that this section of the video is basically just a rant. Season 2 was shit. Let's just get that out of the way. It opens well. The whole story with Nivellen and the changes made to that story in the show were actually done pretty well, which was by far the cruelest trick the writers could play. They showed they have the ability to adapt a novel well, but instead they decide to write their own stories. Almost nothing that happens in season 2 happens in the Blood of Elves novel. In fact, we can go beyond that. It changes so much stuff that this is no longer The Witcher as you know it. At best, this is Witcher fanfiction or some sort of alternate reality. The season introduces so many new aspects to the Witcher lore that never existed prior to the Nightmare of Wolf animated movie. All the backstory for the Witchers that we see in this season comes from that movie and is not consistent with the source material. Personally, I don't see the need to rewrite the Witcher lore. To be honest, it just seems like an excuse to have made the animated movie. But the main problem with this whole lore rewrite is that they couldn't even stay consistent with their own rewrite. So on top of being totally different from the books, they're totally different from their own self-made canon. So while originally they wanted to make the Witcher's origins come from a secret group of mages who combine magic and alchemy, they instead replace all that by saying that to make a Witcher all it takes is some Elder Blood and Triss Merigold. This is opposed to the books where you have to go through the Trial of Grasses and so on. Which really begs the question, why they even bothered making the movie? Actually, it's kind of worse than that. They're completely disregarding the events from season 1 as well. In one scene, they quote Villain Trettenmouth.
Villain Trettenmouth told us we were made for each other. Destined for each other. And that nothing would come of it. Because destiny alone is insufficient. Something more is needed.
But he never actually said that in the show. He only said it in the book. It's almost as if they have no actual plan, and I wouldn't be surprised given the quality of the writing. All these inconsistencies could be their own video, and I'm not going to spend too much time on them anymore. All I will say is, when the writers don't even remember what they wrote, it's a sign the quality of those writers is pretty bad. It's even more bad when you consider the fact that these inconsistencies aren't even the worst writing mistake they made. The biggest mistake by far in season 2 is the character of Yennefer. Yennefer in the books is a strong and powerful woman who is elegant, charismatic, and dangerous. In the show, she's an angsty teenager who seemingly learned how to swear only a few days ago. But somehow, despite not possessing a single quality that would suggest that she is powerful, she somehow manages to come on top of every situation. With no magic, she somehow manages to run away from the most powerful men, women, sorcerers, and sorceresses in the Northern Kingdoms. All it took for her was to chop down 2 pyres. Why didn't anyone stop her from that? Why didn't anyone go after her? Why is there just a horse perfectly positioned for her? None of these questions have any answers. It's almost as if the writers think that we are as dumb as they are. And just like how they failed at developing Geralt and Ciri's relationship in Season 1, they completely failed in Season 2. All that beautiful mother-daughter bond between Yennefer and her ugly one is completely lost. That is of course because rather than having Yennefer and Ciri study and live together in Elander, they replaced that all with Yennefer attempting to kidnap her, essentially eliminating all the beautiful chemistry, and that is essential for both characters' developments. And that's because while Yennefer is a strong, powerful, and all the other adjectives I mentioned before, she's also a massive bitch. At least for the first 2 books. It's with her relationship with Ciri that we start to see her softer side and we start to like and appreciate her more. It's even when Ciri is introduced in Geralt and Yennefer's story that their relationship heals. Now to be fair, that is somewhat attempted in the TV show, but the execution just simply isn't believable. But once again, out of fairness, the trailer for Season 3 does show some mother-daughter bonding, but in my opinion, it's a bit late. They also ruined the relationship between Yennefer and Geralt. In the books, we get some juicy relationship drama where both Geralt and Yennefer are jealous and are in this weird, semi-toxic, on-again, off-again relationship that is best summarized in the Dear Friend letter. There is no Dear Friend letter between Geralt and Yennefer, and of course, the argument that the long letters simply don't work in a TV format is accurate and acceptable, but this pathetic attempt at trying to recreate that sort of awkwardness and tension just isn't good enough.
This is my dear friend.
Dear friend.
The complete disregard of these crucial elements, combined with the rushed storytelling of Season 1, really doesn't do a good enough job at explaining why Geralt and Yennefer are so conflicted with one another. And after kidnapping and Geralt threatening Yennefer with his sword, it makes even less sense that they make up with almost zero hesitation. I don't know what relationship the writers have been in, but I really doubt that anyone in the real world would be able to move past kidnappings and being held at sword point so easily. And the biggest slap in the face goes back to what I mentioned before. All the changes they made to Yennefer's story in Season 1 were solid in my opinion. I really enjoyed them. Again, nobody expects anyone to make an adaptation 100% faithful. We all know that that's not possible. All they want is the essence of the character and the story to be captured. If they just continued that trajectory of using the source material as inspiration to flesh out characters more, they could have definitely done just that. Not just with Yennefer, but the whole series. And for what? What was the purpose of all these changes? The fucking Baba Yaga storyline, which, by the way, ends with Ciri defeating the old witch with the power of family. All that potential is completely wasted on cliche storytelling. It's no wonder that Henry Cavill is leaving the show. He came on the show out of passion for the series, and if the rumors are to be believed, the writers have absolutely no passion for this series, and it really doesn't make sense why Netflix will hire people to adapt a series of people who actively dislike the source material. Again, these are just rumors, and it definitely could be untrue, but considering they completely rewrote basically everything from the lore to the actual events of the source material, it's not that far-fetched. I understand the writers' desire to create their own story, but surely it doesn't take a genius to see that if you completely rewrite a beloved series and you do such a poor job where it looks like you have no plan for what you want to do with the series, you're gonna have controversy, you're gonna lose fans. But despite that, the showrunners are completely unapologetic, and instead they're hostile towards any criticism, and that just shows that this project was doomed from the beginning. I have no faith for Season 3, and honestly I'll just watch it because I still enjoy watching Henry Cavill, and it will be his last time as Geralt of Rivia, which is a damn shame as his performance is one of the few redeemable qualities of the show. Actually, bad writing aside, I think Anya, Freya, and even Joey Beatty were excellent casting choices, and they were a joy to watch, when their characters weren't being butchered, that is. Thank you for watching.